From 2016 to 2023, I worked at indie game publisher Armor Game Studios and read more than 1,000 pitch decks. Let's talk about what I learned. Right, I'm supposed to have a hook. 27 years ago, I gave a presentation about why sharks sometimes attack people. At the end of this video, I'll tell you how that experience can help you make a stronger pitch deck. Crafting your deck is an integral step in finding the right publisher. Besides showing off your game, the things you choose to include or leave out, the level of care you put into the deck, and how thoughtful your plan is all tell the publisher a lot about you and your team, which is as much up for consideration as your game is. Screenshots show off your work, but they also indicate the way you see and talk about your game. Dense, overly wordy slides might indicate that you haven't quite figured out what's truly special about your game. The good news is that opportunities to pitch to publishers aren't quite as fragile as many developers think. If a pitch feels close but doesn't land, pitch again in a few months after you've refined your deck or your game. In fact, publishers love to see how you respond to feedback and if you're willing to work collaboratively. If you learn from and respond to this process, publishers will be happy to give your deck a second look. There's no one-size-fits-all way to build a great deck, but in this video I'm going to share some things that will hopefully make your deck notably better. I'm going to be using examples from the pitch deck for Bear and Breakfast, a game signed and published by Armor during my time there. This and other excellent decks are available for free on HeyGlitch's Notion page, which I'll link in the description down below. With that, let's dive in. This is probably the longest video in the series, but it's arguably the most important, so please hang in there with me. Before we get into the lessons, let's quickly cover what a pitch deck is. Typically, it's 15 to 25 slides that cover the game you're making, the team making it, and what you need in terms of support. I think the preferred format these days is Google Slides, but PowerPoint or a PDF can work just as well. The pitch deck should be a concise packet of information about your game, your team, and your needs. Aside from the email it came through, the deck is the first thing most publishers will open. If they see enough things they like, they'll move on to your build and then probably have a discussion with their team before getting back to you with questions. This game you're making, it's special and amazing in all kinds of ways, I'm sure, and there are probably 20 things you're proud of, like the complex upgrade tree you built or the unique way your character moves. But your elevator pitch isn't about details. It's about making a statement so interesting in its simplicity that the listener stops what they're doing and asks to know more. Rocket League, it's soccer but with cars. Marvel Snap, a collectible card game that only takes 3 minutes to play. These short sentences aren't full of details, yet they quickly convey why those games might be fun or unique. They make you lean in. Elevator pitches are the foundation for your Steam short description. They're what you open emails to press and platforms with. These are the words that get you in the doors that 1,000 other people are trying to walk through as well. Looking at the Bear and Breakfast deck, Gummy Cat dedicates an entire slide to these 17 words. A management adventure game where you take care of a cabin in the woods, but you're a bear. They're not talking about systems or lore, the art style, or the humor, but at the same time you can kind of already picture it. A bear behind a desk handing out room keys or wearing an apron making eggs for his guests. Silly bear. Management gives you those SimCity vibes. Adventure game tells you there's a world to explore. But You're a Bear tells you it's going to be lighthearted rather than hardcore like many games in that genre. This is the 4th slide in the deck, and Gummy Cat hasn't mentioned a single mechanic or shown you their characters, yet you can already imagine the gameplay and why this game might be special. Many developers will attempt to estimate sales as a way to demonstrate their game's value. In the 1,000+ pitches I've seen, I can't think of very many who landed on realistic numbers in their pitches, especially if they're drawing inspiration from 2 or more popular games. It usually goes something like, it's Fortnite meets The Binding of Isaac, so we're estimating 8 million sales in the first year because those audiences are huge. Right. There are a bunch of things wrong with this approach. From shifting taste to growing market saturation, even if you happen to have real sales numbers from another game, they probably don't apply to yours. Stardew Valley did incredibly well and single-handedly revived the farming sim genre. However, few, if any, games inspired by it will do anywhere near what that game did in sales. Secondarily, combining game genres generally isn't additive. Instead, you end up only applying to people who like both genres rather than anyone who likes either, which is going to end up being a much smaller number than the math you did in your deck. Last, and most importantly, the publisher has launched dozens of games, if not more, so they're working with a much better dataset than you. And not only that, they know their audience, so they're not going to base their decision on generic potential, but rather the game's potential given their expertise and fan base. At Armor, we turned down many games we thought would do well in the right hands, we just knew we weren't the right hands. Far better than estimating sales is being able to demonstrate you know who your audience is. What games do they like and why will yours appeal to them? What features will they expect and how have you included or improved upon those? Have you already started building a community and what has been their response so far? The size of your potential audience doesn't matter if you don't know how to cater to them. I would gladly bet on a developer who knows how to delight a focused audience over one targeting a large audience they don't fully understand. If you look at Gummy Cat's concept slide, they state that they have a love for systematic management games, meaning they know the formula. They're part of this fan base. Their thesis, however, is that there's a lack of games in this space with a good story, and they aim to fix that. They're setting out to deliver a game in a genre they know and love while adding something they feel is lacking in games like it. Right before their deck wraps up, they reinforce the idea that they know who their audience is and what those folks are looking for. Gummy Cat isn't shouting about how big their audience is or how many units they can sell, but rather how focused they are on a specific group that they understand. Demonstrating that you know who your audience is and how to deliver for them is far more valuable to the publisher than making a guess at how many units you can sell. First off, I'm in no way diminishing the importance of art and artists in your game. Having great art is critical, but you have to remember, you probably only have a few minutes before you lose the attention of the reader. So what I'm talking about is using the art more efficiently than having dedicated look at our art slides. Throughout the deck, you see several locations in both day and night cycles, giving you a sense of scale and atmosphere. It shows off multiple characters and game mechanics without dedicating slides to talking about those things. There's even one slide that's just a full-page screenshot of Hank making a joke, which speaks volumes about what the writing and tone of the game will be like, while also giving the reader a breather between topics. None of these slides are dedicated to talking about the art. They're functional set dressing that make for a beautiful deck without having to explain the art's role in the game. 2 bears, 1 stone. Before I move on, the same applies to dedicating too many slides to your lore and backstory. A single slide is often enough. One exception is if you're tackling a heavier subject like mental health, it might take more than one slide to explain why this subject is near and dear to you and to demonstrate that you intend to treat it with the care and respect it deserves. I'm thankful that we're seeing less and less planned crunch from developers these days, but it's still an issue worth addressing. New developers tend to worry that if they ask for an amount that's too big, they'll blow their shot. Ask for what you think you need and leave yourself room to negotiate. First of all, if a publisher really likes a game and the number is too big, they'll set up a call to ask about your costs and to see if there's a creative way to make the numbers work. Publishers, good publishers, don't open an email, see a game that excites them, and then delete the email if the number scares them. They start a conversation. Anyhow, it's typical for a developer who is worried about their costs to try making that number smaller by doing what-if math. What if I work weekends? What if I squeeze an hour in before work and after dinner? Please, please, please do not do this to yourself. Most games slide at least a little for one reason or another, so if you start out with no wiggle room, you'll really be in trouble when the game's schedule inevitably moves. Secondarily, even if the game doesn't move, planning to crunch isn't a healthy way to live, nor is it a way to do your best work. Craft a realistic time and budget with some breathing room built in. If the publisher agrees to your schedule, you'll need this time for unexpected things. Trust me. And this is not a license to add more features. I'll say that again. This is not a license to add more features. It's a buffer for surprises, and there will be both good and bad surprises along the way. When building your schedule, identify where major milestones might fall. This will help the publisher gauge how these milestones line up with their existing catalog and resources. You should also make it clear where in the process your game is, which includes sharing what was done and by whom to get you to this point. This will give the publisher an idea of what you can accomplish in a given amount of time, allowing them to assess your estimations and what you could do with more funding. As far as your budget is concerned, you'll want to show how you arrived at the amount you're asking for. A few major buckets like programming, art, and sound will likely do. You won't always have to assign marketing budgets, as GummyCat did, but if this is something your team has interest and experience with, by all means, do so here. If you've put your own money into the game, taken money from other investors, or have been awarded grants, this is a good place to call that out. Be prepared to talk about the terms of those investments or grants when it comes time to speak with the publisher. Crunch, for some, is a given in this industry, and it's not always avoidable, but you definitely won't be able to avoid it if you build it in. Ask for what you think you need and go from there. Nobody gets a yes from the first email or the initial meeting. There are many steps between emailing a publisher and signing a deal, many of which we'll cover in this series. And most developers pitch to many publishers before getting even a nibble. Don't be discouraged if it takes you a while to land a deal. If you can get some feedback from publishers who turn you down, this is worth its weight in gold. You won't always get a response, but it's okay to politely ask what didn't make your game a fit for their business. This information can make both your game and your pitch stronger, same as applying feedback from beta testers. This doesn't mean you should change your vision to match that of the publishers, but if they've keyed in on reasons your game might be tough to sell, this is information worth considering. In all likelihood, you'll be pitching to many publishers, and in some cases, the same publisher more than once. So expect this to be an iterative process and try to see each rejection as a learning opportunity rather than a downvote on you or your game. Although, I know that's easier said than done. I want to thank Rarish, the games director, for giving me the okay to gush about what is easily one of the best pitch decks I've ever seen. If you haven't already picked up Bear and Breakfast, you should. It's a delightful game made by wonderful people, and this video isn't sponsored by GummyCat. I just wanted to send some love their way, and it really is a fun game. Alright, remember my 9th grade presentation from the start of the video? Here's the moral of that story. Despite having organized every supporting detail I needed to say, on the day of, I ad-libbed a fact that wasn't critical to my thesis and got it wrong. Had I gotten it right, my presentation wouldn't have been any stronger, but I ended up losing points over a fact my instructor knew more about than I did. When it comes to your pitch deck, there are some things the publisher will probably know better than you, either because they're working with a much larger dataset or because they're looking at it through their own lens. Stick to the details you can speak to with confidence that are supportive of your thesis, which is, we have a great idea that we're passionate about, we know our audience, and our team can deliver on its vision. The cost, how many units it might sell, how long the project should take, these are all things you can sort out together after your pitch gets the conversation started, which is the topic I'll cover in a future video. But what you know about your game, your team, and your audience is something you're uniquely capable of expressing. Good luck, and be patient. I've been getting a lot of wonderful comments on this series, so please keep the questions and feedback coming. Besides being encouraging, it's helpful to hear about the things you all want to learn. If you'd like to support more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, until next time, be kind to yourself and be kind to others.